Hello YouTube friends, Ben Ochart here. Thank you for tuning in. Let's be honest, do you quarantine your fish every time before adding them to your show tank? Let's talk about it here. In a recent video you heard me talk about how my outdoor quarantine tank, where new fish would normally go, had to be moved inside because of the extreme temperatures we were getting here in Southern California, averaging between 95 and 105 degrees. Just made it impossible to keep a tank, an outside tank, at a safe temperature without doing something extreme. So I've decided to bring this tank inside. I've been ghost feeding it, so it has good beneficial bacteria in the substrate and also in the filter sponges. So all I need to do is get it into the house and then set it up and fill it up, and it should be really good to go. So that's exactly what I did. I set it up underneath the 100 gallon in my living room, and went ahead and put some prime in there, enough prime for a 30-gallon tank, and went ahead and filled it with some tap water, and then went out to the local fish store where I picked up some fish that were fairly inexpensive and that would let me give this tank a true test that it was ready for the introduction of fish. I wanted to do this in preparation for some exochromis that are being delivered by American Cichlids. As you can see, I have a strawberry peacock, an OB peacock with a nice blue face, a sulfur head with a very pretty red-orange sulfur on the forehead, very nice blaze, and I also have in the group a red shoulder. So these fish were acclimated and then flopped and dropped into the tank, and you can see them here. They're pretty active. They don't really look like they're under much stress. They don't seem to be gasping or looking in some way distressed. So I think the tank's in good shape. Of course, when you have new fish, you really don't know for about 24 to 48 hours what kind of condition they're in or if they're going to make it. I look at things like activity level. Are they gasping? Are they interacting or hanging out in a corner? And of course, probably the most important test, are they eating? These fish did start taking food right away, and so I feel pretty confident about these 4 fish. But I wanted to find out what the people at the ben.o.cichlid Facebook page thought about quarantine, or using a quarantine procedure. I asked a simple question: be honest, do you always quarantine new fish for several weeks before adding to your show tank? And I got a wide range of answers. Zenzo, one of the group administrators, said yes, every time new fish go down to the fish room in a bare tank, they get the medication trio treatment for 1 week, and then I observe them for a while longer before adding to established tanks. So not only is Zenzo quarantining his fish, but he's also treating them, medicating them. Paul, the inventory king on YouTube, said yes, 1 to 2 weeks minimum. So Paul also quarantines. George mentioned not when I first started up, but after that, yes, except once that I decided just to put them in there. Big mistake, lost a lot of guys. A lot of us will relate to that comment. Ryan, nope, I always get my fish from super good places that are healthy. I have never had a problem. I just accumulate them and drop them in. Zenzo replied to that with, it's always best to quarantine your fish regardless of where they come from or how well you trust the source. Most of us that have been in the hobby long enough have learned this the hard way. I certainly have. Zenzo, by the way, has Tazawa tanks on YouTube. Check him out. I'll put a link to his channel and Paul's below. He goes on to say if you don't have an extra tank, that is okay. A 10-gallon plastic tote will work the same way. All you need is a small air pump and a small sponge filter. You can keep a small sponge filter cycled by keeping it inside another filter and then pull it out when needed. Total investment for a small sponge, a small air pump, all of this comes to about 10 to 20 bucks. Just keep it empty in the garage or in a closet when you don't need it. Very good tips, Zenzo, and I'm sure he's speaking here from the experience he has in keeping a very high number of tanks. And check out his channel, you'll see what I mean. Henro mention no. If the fish looks healthy, I just add him. So you can see we have extremely different answers here. Roderick says no, just flop and drop, no problems yet. For me, Roderick, yet is the operative word here. David says, I didn't then. I just about exterminated a whole tank with Colomaris. Now I quarantine all new fish for 4 weeks. The first week I treat them with antibiotics, Canaplex, as bacterial infections are the most common killer of new fish. I then deworm them with 3 weeks of, looks like Prazic, Quintel, and Levamisol. Just how I do it. So here's someone again who medicates and quarantines. Chris Haley, I didn't once. Do you know how much ick medicine it takes to treat a 240 gallon tank? Wow, I imagine that's expensive. Always, I would rather lose a couple of new fish than the 30 odd fish I have in my show tank. Agreed, Robin. Dennis, I'm being honest, Ben, not always. There are a couple of online sources I get my fish from that treat all their fish before they go out for sale. Anyone else? Yes, I quarantine. Well, I get that. There are some trusted sources out there, but like Zenzo said, sometimes you're better safe than sorry. Matt says, I absolutely do. Way too much risk. I'd always rather lose a new fish than fish I've had forever. I've increased my duration to a month after having issues with just 2 weeks. I've done the same thing, Matt. I've gone to a 4-week quarantine. And these fish here that I picked up recently, that you see now swimming around, these guys are going to be in this tank for a minimum of 1 month. They're going to be joined by the exochromis that are being sent to me by Josh over at Cunningham Cichlids. And when I add fish to a tank that contains fish that are in quarantine, the clock starts all over again. So here you can see it set up. I like the way it looks in the living room underneath the 100. And it's across from the 60, and the fish will usually graduate. They'll graduate from the quarantine tank over to the 60, and then finally these fish will end up in the 100. I've learned, as you can see in some of my prior videos, I've learned the hard way. I've had Colomaris, I've had other diseases, and some of those instances that you can see in some of my past videos, like my fish are dying, those instances were brought about because of my negligence in handling a quarantine correctly. So there you have it. Post your comment below. Be sure to rate, sub, share, all that good stuff. Thank you for tuning in.